On 19th October 2017, the first interstellar object was detected tumbling through our solar system at a speed close to 59,000 miles per hour. Astronomers have classed it as being of natural origin, but certain anomalies in its flight path, including a sudden unexplained acceleration, lead many to believe that this is an alien object. Join us on Aliens Explored as we discuss the mystery of Oumuamua.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective, whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we look at the strange and mysterious within the UFO and otherworldly community. I'm one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly.
And this week, it's quite an interesting one, this. It's recent history, so just 2017, just over 3 years ago now. This object's come into the solar system.
Well,
it's been picked up.
It excited astronomers, obviously. The first known interstellar object detected passing through the solar system. I didn't know that. I assumed all sorts of comets and asteroids and whatever. I mean, does it count as interstellar as soon as it leaves our solar system?
Well, interstellar means between stars.
Between stars. But once you're out of our solar system, presumably are you in another solar system, or is there an empty space in between?
Well, you're travelling between solar systems, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's I suppose extrastellar, I don't know if that's a word.
But it's been travelling between star systems. So I just always believed that things like Halley's Comet would follow a route which would take them out of our solar system, potentially into another one, before they loop back and come round again. But apparently, well, our solar system is quite huge, isn't it? I mean, once you get to Pluto, you're pretty much still only halfway through it, halfway across it. There's a long way to go before you're deemed to be out of the solar system.
Well, it's one of the things that a lot of people struggle to get that. I know I struggle to get my head around the actual enormity of space and the distances involved. And we talk about the solar system like it's local, but it's really not local at all. It is absolutely massive. So the idea that something has come from outside that area is it's almost inconceivable. But here it is, Oumuamua, which is the Hawaiian, roughly, vaguely translates as scout or something similar. But yes, so it's coming on this trajectory into our solar system. It comes quite close to the sun. And bear in mind that there's a gravitational pull from the sun. I mean, the sun is like incredible in size compared to, the Earth, which has a pretty sizable gravitational pull as it is. It comes close to the sun, which implies, it's being pulled into it, and then it changes direction and accelerates away.
But could that also be to do with the gravitational pull of the sun? I mean, I know from watching Apollo 15 with Tom Hanks saying that they would abort their moon landing and they would orbit the moon and use the moon's gravitational pull to kind of as a slingshot to fire them back So was Oumuamua doing that with the sun?
Quite possibly. But here's the thing about doing a slingshot around a gravitational object. You need thrusters to guide you in that particular direction. If you're just floating randomly, you are not going to slingshot. You're going to crash into it.
And that's an interesting thing. I mean, it looks like it got quite close to the sun, that it was actually within, between Mercury's gravitational orbit and the sun, that it didn't just get sucked into the sun.
Exactly. Now, it is... So it's not unknown for comets in particular, which is what this was originally thought to be, to change directions suddenly and to slow down, to decelerate as they approach the sun, because what happens, you've got pockets of gas in these in comets, and as they get closer to the sun, of course, they melt because they're ice. And these pockets of gas are suddenly released, which creates it's almost like a jetpack effect.
It's exactly
directly at the sun.
Yeah, it melts the ice, turns it into steam, and it blasts out and powers it.
So you get deceleration happening quite a lot with these things. You can get course changes happening because of these things. But what you also always invariably get is a visible release of gas. Which Oumuamua did not have.
Right. So it just randomly accelerated away from the sun.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, it seems random.
but people, astronomers watching it presumably are able to say, there was definitely no release of gas. And I cannot explain how it accelerated.
It was being watched very, very carefully. I actually remember the event happening as it at the time, coming out on the news, and it was being watched very closely. So this was very exciting, even as it was originally thought. Just a bit of an asteroid or a comet or just a normal bit of flotsam and jetsam from space. But it was very exciting because it was the first interstellar object that had been tracked, because we've now got this technology to track these things coming into the solar system from outside, which we'd just not had before. We can track things really well, but this was a first. This was a big event, and it turns out that it's this thing that actually behaves like it's making course corrections. Very strange indeed.
And flying at cosmic speeds. I mean, I'm reading the information here. It has a hyperbolic excess velocity, which is apparently its speed relative to the sun when in interstellar space, of 58,900 miles per hour, or 94,800 kilometers per hour. To put that in context, the muzzle velocity of a high velocity round coming out of an AR-15, very popular with perhaps some of our listeners, is 3,000 meters per second, which is about 2,000 miles per hour. So this thing is going 30 times as fast as the fastest point at which your bullet is travelling.
Faster than a speeding bullet. There
30 times as fast as a speeding bullet.
I mean, that's. You can also imagine that over an extended period of time in space, where you've got no drag coefficient, and you've got continual acceleration, you will pick up a pretty fair lick of speed. Yeah. But yeah, that is pretty fast then. It's not a small object. Now, I mentioned at the end of last episode, I did a comparison to the Arthur C. Clarke science fiction novel Rendezvous with Rama, which is an excellent book and well worth a read, where a cylindrical object comes in to the solar system, is quickly discovered to be artificial, and humans land on it and explore it, and it turns out to be a vessel. Now, I'm not saying that this is a vessel, but it actually has some interesting similarities with Rama in the whole almost cylindrical kind of cigar-shaped shape.
It is like a rough cigar, isn't it? Or a doobie that someone's badly rolled.
I know nothing about what you're talking about there at all.
I'm only going with what I've seen on television, listeners.
But this is quite. I mean, Rama in the book is a massive vehicle. This is quite a lot smaller than that, of course, at about 100 yards long, which is still. I mean, that's not small.
Well. They seem to have very varying guesses. It's estimated to be between 100 and 1,000 metres long, between 300 and 3,000 feet. So that's quite a range, isn't it, of possibilities. It could be this size, or it could actually be 10 times that size.
Okay, I hadn't.
Yeah, and it's
hadn't come across that.
Yeah, estimated to range between 35 metres and 167 metres, so somewhere between 115 feet and 548 feet wide.
Right.
So that's quite a very... And given that they're so vague about how big it is it possible they might have missed other things, like an explosion of gas as ice inside it melts and turns to steam and acts as a jet?
I suppose that's theoretically possible, but they were specifically looking for that release of gas. And also, I suppose, from the angle that they were looking at, it's not going to have been obscured.
But what they're saying was there was no release of gas. They're not saying there might have been a release of gas, but we didn't see it. They're saying there just definitely wasn't one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would have seen it happening. And it's also the concept, as it moved away from the sun, it accelerated. Only slightly, but it's significant, the fact that it accelerated at all as it moved away.
Right, but they couldn't account for the acceleration in any way.
Nope. Not at all. I mean, the only technology that we have, or we sort of come close to on this planet, would be something like solar sail technology. I don't know if you're familiar with that, are you, Neil?
I've heard of it, and I've heard of solar winds and things. And
well, the concept is that you use a large enough. But basically, like a sailboat being pushed by wind, this is actually pushed by particles from the sun. And if you have a large enough reflective surface, it will propel a vehicle through space by basically using particles from the sunlight.
Well, you can buy these little windmills, can't you, that are powered by sunlight? A little clear plastic dome with a little thing spinning around, which is a reflective surface facing a non-reflective surface, and the sunlight on it makes it spin.
Well, that's photovoltaic solar power, right, which is slightly different. That uses energy from the sun and converts it into electricity. Yet you've got two different types of solar power in common use. One is photovoltaic, which is the one you're describing there. The other one is solar thermal, which a lot of people use for the heating in their house, which essentially uses large black shiny tiles filled with tiny little tubes with water inside, and what it does is it superheats the water as it flows through them, and then that heats your hot water system or your central heating system in your home. So you've got two different types there, but this is kind of a third type. This is effectively using radiation to push it. So it's a kinetic force rather than an electrical force.
And that's more effective than harnessing a different kind of solar power to drive an engine, for instance.
Well, you'd have to have an engine for a start, and the moment you start converting one form of energy into another, you're going to get sort of diminishing return, basically. Whereas a solar sail is a much sort of cleaner, direct form, if you like. It's literally just using radiation to push it. It's as simple as that. It's a bit like using a wind farm on a boat,
as opposed to having
run an engine.
Yeah.
It's like cut out the middleman. So there you go. So that's the closest thing that we understand in our current level of technology that could do what this thing has done. This is my understanding.
Now, I understand as it travels through space, it's in a kind of tumbling motion. Is that end over end?
It appears to be, yes.
So it's not travelling as you would expect a craft like that. It's not like in Star Wars, this huge long cigar thing flying over. It's tumbling over and over.
Absolutely. And that also kind of puts paid to this idea that it's a pocketed release of gas, because that would affect its tumbling motion
more than its directional. Well, it might affect its direction, or more than its actual velocity. It'll make it spin faster, maybe like a Catherine wheel.
Spin faster, spin more slowly, spin in a different direction. I mean, there's all sorts of, depending on where the gas is released from. But that also is an uncommon thing for a comet. Apparently, is over time they don't. I mean, they're not quite spherical, and they can end up quite streamlined. But that's because of the forces that they do encounter on occasion, sort of paring them down, as it were. So this tumbling, that's a really weird thing for it to do.
Well, not if it's a piece of debris from a long ago. Was it a supernova or something like that? That just if it's been blasted into space by some kind of interstellar event, that it would be just tumbling over and over and over, and there's no friction in space to slow it down.
Except there are forces that work on it. So, for example, the gravitational pull of the Earth doesn't just end at the atmosphere.
No.
Our gravitational pull, it obviously affects the Moon. It affects other planets. I mean, the planets on our solar system all work. If one of the planets is knocked out with its of alignment, even slightly, it affects all of them.
Isn't there something? There's a rate of gravity which has to be correct to something like 23 decimal places, and if gravity is slightly too powerful, the universe will kind of collapse in on itself, and if it's slightly too weak, the universe will just disintegrate. It'll just everything will fall apart, all the orbits. So it's a very fine measure, and there's something else called the cosmological constant, isn't there, that keeps the universe hanging together.
But I mean, we talk about it hanging together, but it's not. I mean, after the Big Bang, you've got this explosion, the universe is created. You've actually got the big bust, it's actually going to start contracting in on itself back to a pre-Big Bang status,
and time will run backwards. And someone hypothesised that has already happened. The universe has already reached its maximum expansion and is now contracting, and time is running backwards, which is why nothing makes sense.
I think Red Dwarf put forward that the TV show for our overseas listeners, Red Dwarf is a sci-fi comedy from the BBC. Very, very funny. Well worth looking up. And if you're into your sci-fi and you like comedy. Yes, they put forward that theory that our universe is the one that is wrong and it's running backwards. But yes. So if it's debris from this supernova, it's tumbling through space. That's fine, except the tumbling would be affected the moment. And look how close it came to the sun. Well, that would have affected it.
It's not like they've been observing it for a long time, is it? It was first spotted in 2017.
Yeah.
40 days after it passed its closest point to the sun. When it was first observed, it was about 33 million kilometres from Earth, which is about 85 times as far away as the moon, and already heading away from the sun. So it's not something they've had a great deal of time to study. It was speculated that it could have been an alien object. In 2019, astronomers reported that Oumuamua was an object of a purely natural origin. I think at one point they said it was a comet, and then they changed the designation to an asteroid because of something, is it a coma or a comma that it lacked? So there's an awful lot of technical terms here.
There would be, but how can they possibly know? And I'm sorry, no comet, no asteroid makes course corrections like that.
Unless it's I mean they did say, despite its close approach to the sun, Oumuamua showed no signs of having a comma. So is it a comma or a coma? Which is the nebulous envelope around the nucleus of a comet, formed when the comet passes close to the sun on its highly elliptical orbit. As the comet warms, parts of it sublimate. This gives the comet a fuzzy appearance when viewed in telescopes and distinguishes it from stars. But it did exhibit non-gravitational acceleration. So it's in free fall in a vacuum. Oh, so gravitational acceleration is caused exclusively by the force of gravitational attraction. So it's not going to be repelled by the sun's gravitational pull. It's going to be attracted by something. That's what it would accelerate.
So what you've just said is it's not a comet because it doesn't have certain things that are exhibited by a comet. It's not a comet. And it did something straight. It worked against gravity.
It worked against gravity, but nevertheless, astronomers are saying that this is a purely natural origin, even if they can't tell you why it.
But that so I mean, forgive me for saying this, but that just sounds like a load of techno babble to hide the fact they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But they say, "Oh, look, it's natural because techno babble. We don't know what it is."
Yeah.
Well, if they don't know what it is, how can they say it's natural?
According to a NASA scientist, the object could be a remnant of a disintegrated rogue comet, or exocomet, which is a comet outside the solar system, which includes rogue comets and comets that orbit stars other than the sun. The first exocomets were detected in 1987 around Beta Pictoris, a very young A-type main sequence star. There are now a total of 27 stars around which they've spotted these things, but this one engages in interstellar travel.
Except you've just said these other experts said it can't be a comet because it doesn't exhibit this nucleus thing. So when it says astronomers reported that it was an object of purely natural origin, that's not 100% consensus. That's just some astronomers have said that. But
in response to speculation that it was actually an alien object.
Well, do you know what? Let's look at what's said by someone who I think we can agree is an expert in these things. Harvard, as a university, is very, very well renowned. So the chair of the Department of Astronomy for Harvard, he said he's absolutely convinced that it is
I'm hanging on you every word here.
From an alien civilization. I wanted to make sure I use the words correctly. from
Right.
an alien civilization. That's Avi Loeb. He does have a book coming out, Extraterrestrial, The First Signs of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth. It comes out in January 26th, in fact, of this year, which will be interesting.
Presumably they can't track Oumuamua and work out when we're likely to see it again, if that's likely to happen.
Well, why would we see it again? I mean, not all astronomical objects have an elliptical or looped pattern. I know some do, obviously, Halley's Comet and is it Kepler?
Yeah.
I think. But not everything does. And indeed, as our ability to track things increases, and bear in mind, it's not like we've got telescopes pointed at every part of the sky at all times. No. We're looking at a tiny, tiny fraction of our solar system at any given moment. So the fact that we found this thing, the fact that we saw it, I know you said like it was 40 days after the event, but that in itself, the fact we found it is quite incredible. So these things could be happening all the time around us, and we just, we're going to miss it.
Yeah, but there's also a concern, isn't there, of how would we know if a comet or asteroid was heading towards us to wipe us out? Apparently, I mean, people have talked about we could deploy nuclear weapons to intercept these things, but actually these things come so fast we don't have a way of seeing them coming. We've only ever tracked them after they've gone past, and you can imagine there was a comet or an asteroid I read about that we had a near miss, and it missed Earth by, it sounds like a lot, I think it was 100,000 miles.
That's not a lot at all.
But according to Bill Bryson, that's the equivalent of a bullet through your hat brim. It's really close.
It is, and if I'm thinking about the same event, that would have been an apocalyptic event.
Oh, God, yeah.
If it had hit, was that the one that was larger than the asteroid that killed off the dinosaurs?
I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, it was a close call.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you look at the moon. I mean, the moon is our defense system from a lot of asteroids, of course. That's why the moon is so pockmarked. It almost attracts them. It draws them in and takes a lot of the
fire for us. Right.
Yeah, it's one of the things that the moon just happens to do. And it's all to do with gravitational forces and what have you.
But the moon doesn't get destroyed. But I suppose it wouldn't destroy the Earth, would it? It would destroy life on the Earth.
Yes.
If it impacted.
Yes. I mean, it's basically a big cloud that kills off life. Because it creates an ice age.
A massive explosion as well.
Well, the explosion would definitely do a lot of damage, but on a global side, it's more about bringing about another ice age as this cloud of dust goes up into the sky and blocks out sunlight, basically. The Earth cools down very rapidly, you get another ice age, and bang. Yeah, we're gone like the dinosaurs, and then it's the cockroaches' turn.
Yes. I was reading about these. There are these shelters deep under the ground, and you can book a place there for yourself and your family to survive something like that, or a nuclear war, or the zombie apocalypse. The idea is that you can go down there and survive for a couple of years until the Earth is habitable again. But of course, it's very, very expensive, and so of course the only people who can afford to go down there and survive are rich people. And when they come out, they will have such post-apocalyptic survival skills as owning land or manipulating the stock market or running a hedge fund.
Yes. There's very little in the way of practical skills.
Yes, presumably they'll be watching webinars while they're down there.
Maybe it's maybe they've got a bunker for them, their family, and their gardener. One never knows. But okay, well let's let's summarise about Oumuamua then. So actually, before we do, I'm going to ask you a quick question. But had you been aware of it in 2017, or is this kind of the first you're hearing about it?
No, I remember something about it. I remember the excitement that there was an interstellar object passing through our solar system.
It was big news at the time. It's amazing we've kind of almost forgotten, but it has been an eventful year.
It's been an eventful time, yes, but it's this long cigar-shaped thing that was that they speculated was some kind of alien craft. I don't remember the bit about it tumbling over and over and over, but
there we go. So what do you think then? Is this an alien craft or alien technology, an alien probe perhaps?
I don't know. It's just something passing through space, and there's probably all sorts of stuff going through space that we've never heard of before, and with forces acting on it that we're not quite aware of.
I suppose the ultimate question is, do you think that's an intelligent force deliberately controlling it, or is it more of a natural force and it's just random?
I'm going to go with natural and random.
You are?
Yes.
Sell me on it. Tell me why.
I can't think what it would be doing. I mean, all right, I know we always think in terrestrial terms, and we think of, whenever we think of spacecraft, we think of spacecraft that we would fly in, and that which would be basically like an aircraft, an aeroplane that would fly in a straight direction. It would have a cockpit and such. It wouldn't be an object that tumbles over and over and over randomly, but that might be a very efficient way to and in space, of course, we've got a neutral gravity. You might not notice your craft tumbling over and over and over. You wouldn't notice it being upside down, would you?
Well, there wouldn't be an upside down.
No, there isn't an upside down. So it's very difficult to relate that to any kind of vehicle that a human might travel in. So, and all it did was pass through in the way that a comet or an asteroid would pass through, even though it's not, on, as far as we know, on an elliptical route. But I don't know. There are things about it that can't be explained. But I'm still coming down on the. Yeah, there are doubts. There are odd things about it that can't be explained. But I think I'm still, because that's the format of this show, I'm going to come down on the side of it's a natural object. It's not intelligent. And
you don't have to take that stance. if we've convinced you, that's great.
Do you think we might have a show one day where I convince you the other way? You say, "Oh yeah, that's probably bollocks."
It's quite possible.
Yeah.
And do you know what? There will be some events, no doubt, that we discuss that I do feel that. In fact, we've had discussions where I've agreed, no, that wasn't otherworldly. Yeah. But do you know what? Okay, so you've talked about vehicles, and I'm going to tell you exactly why I feel the opposite, why I'm convinced that this is some form of alien technology.
Okay.
And do you know what? I might even convince you of this, because you've talked about vehicles that we would sit inside and travel in, and I'm going to give you a different type of vehicle. I'm going to talk about Voyager. I'm going to talk about Cassini. I'm going to talk about satellites and probes that are sent out into the universe to collect information and send that information back. Why couldn't this be exactly that? It flies through the solar system, collecting information about our solar system, then veers off into the great unknown, onto the next solar system to collect more information for an alien civilization.
Or perhaps a bit like our Voyagers, that they only collect information as far as until they reach a point when they can no longer send it back, and then from that point on they are just a bearer of information if they should happen to fetch up somewhere.
Absolutely.
So it could be.
And with solar power of some description, I mean, I've talked about solar sails, we've talked about solar photovoltaic. There may well be other forms of solar power that we are currently unaware of that it might have utilised. Maybe it was utilising gravitational energy to use its course correction. Who knows? I mean, but I'm absolutely convinced that this was a form of technology passing through our solar system, possibly collecting information to send back to some distant alien civilization.
Or perhaps some civilization that died out millions of years ago that they launched the thing, it travelled a certain distance, sending back information, and then that was it. It was gone. No way to bring it back. It just
Vacuum of
keeps on
space
going.
is going to preserve it quite well, I would have thought. So that's a distinct possibility, absolutely. But what do you think, listeners? Do you remember when this news broke? What were your thoughts at the time, and what are your thoughts now on it? It's certainly an interesting subject. The jury's out for Neil, it seems. I remain convinced, as ever, which won't be a surprise to our regular listeners. But we really do want to hear what you think. You can find us in the usual places on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or by visiting aliensexplored.com. We really, really do want to hear from you. Don't forget to join us next week when we'll be discussing some quite interesting breaking news, Neil. So there was a very recent COVID bill. We don't talk about COVID very much on the show. But yes, there was an interesting COVID bill that was signed that, and I can't for the life of me work out what it's doing in there, but there's 180 days notice to release all information pertaining to UFOs. What's that about?
Was it something in the small print? Yes, you obviously want all this money to deal with COVID, to get your testing and tracing and vaccinations and PPE. Sign here. Oh, what's all this? Don't bother reading that. Just sign here. Then after they've signed it, we've agreed to release all the information we have on UFOs.
What's that about?
It looks like something like that. Just
yeah. Well, do you know what? We'll be seeing if we can get to the bottom of that. What is really going on there? So do join us for that very, very exciting episode. I can't wait.
Me neither. I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. In the meantime, keep watching those extra stellar objects coming into our solar system via the skies. Until next time, take care.
Bye. Next time.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.